Before Budget 2018, there was much speculation about the imposition of a wealth tax. With us in studio today, we have Tim Mertens, who is the chairman of Sovereign Trust. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Tim, how has Minister Malusi Gigaba handled this wealth tax in his Budget 2018?
Well, there was a lot of speculation previously about a full wealth tax being implemented, basically, which would mean a percentage of net wealth would be levied every year. And that hasn't come in that particular form, but there are other forms of wealth tax that have been implemented, and one of them is obviously an increase in the strengthening of estate duty. So it's a bit unfortunate in some ways that the abatement, the 3.5 million rand abatement, hasn't gone up as it was, I think, intended to do. So, but what it means is that for all amounts over 3.5 million, there's going to be an estate duty of 20%, up to a value of 30 million rand. And over 30 million rand, then that number jumps to 25%. So we can see a sort of a gradual encroachment of taxing the wealthy, especially when it comes to estate duty. And that's just one of the pillars of this wealth tax.
Your thoughts on the other taxes mentioned in the budget?
Well, the bands of tax have been played around with, which is much expected. There is some relief at the bottom end of the bands. Obviously, as expected, those at the high end of the spectrum have there's going to be higher tax, so that was expected. Again, it's just back to this huge budget deficit of what, 48 billion rand, which is a massive sum to make up. So Mr. Gigaba has had to, really think very carefully with other pressures on him as to where he's going to get that. So the obvious one, obviously, was increases in the bands, and then, as we know, the 1% increase in VAT to 15%, which will yield, he seems to think, something in the order of 36 billion rand. So that's a big boost, obviously.
Do you think Minister Gigaba had much choice?
I don't think so. I think in desperate times, the obvious imposition of tax increases is in the area of VAT, because that's just an easy tax to collect. So that was probably always going to be on the cards. I mean, it could have been higher, and there could have been other bans. There were bans of VAT that were mooted for example, luxury goods. Yeah. It could have been 20 for ultra luxury goods, perhaps 30. That hasn't come in, but certainly the VAT is going to be a major boost to the fiscus. That's for sure.
Do you see Budget 2018 as the government trying to strengthen the bonds, trying to strengthen the social bonds between government and society?
I think that's absolutely right. I think
all the themes sort of seem to point to that, the manner in which Minister Malusi Gigaba delivered his speech, his constant references. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're right, and I think that follows on from the sonar, the sonar debates and statement by the new president that obviously there's a clean-up that's necessary, and that's part of the social contract, is that government, will provide this clean-up. Hopefully it'll be a thorough one. There are various commissions of inquiry that are on the cards now, that hopefully there will be more credibility within government, which will then encourage taxpayers to then be compliant. And he also, the Minister of Finance also alluded to the fact that, there would still be this pressure to look at non-compliance. He mentioned, of course, the VDP, where there were 2,000 applicants, which I think has yielded 3 billion. Yeah. So that is all still going to continue. But at the same time, government has also got a duty to say, right, we're doing the right things. We're trying to clean up our act. And for that, then that's, the increases in taxes are then justified.
As we wrap, do you think this was a credible budget?
I think it was a difficult situation that he's in, and I think it's relatively credible in the sense that there weren't massive surprises. Certainly on the wealth tax, there wasn't a massive surprise in an imposition of an actual wealth tax. So I think he did what he had to do, and I think the big one obviously is VAT, and that I think it's VAT and corporate tax. Really, I think it makes up something like 80% of the income. So he had to sort of go in that way.
And now all we're going to do is be holding our breath and see what the ratings agencies are going to be at.
Well, Moody's, I think, is obviously waiting in the wings to look and see if the reforms that are very much needed within government are going to be, played out and actually happen at a deep level. So I think they're just going to wait and see what happens from the point of view of action from government as opposed to just talk.
As it stands right now, what do you think the Moody's are and the ratings agencies, where do you think they're leaning towards?
I think they're probably going to leaning towards just simply keeping us on a watch list, and to maybe give this new dispensation, the cabinet reshuffle that might be coming up, to give all of that a bit of a chance. I think they are relatively fair in terms of all the rating agencies. The others have been much harsher. And I think that they're probably going to stay in the wings. I certainly hope so, and give the government a chance to actually perform.
Well, we hope so too, and we'll keep in touch and up to date with what Moody's does.